Alright, welcome everyone. This is going to be the first of a series of videos to set up a multiplayer project with Unity. We're going to use Unity's netcode and their transport and collections in order to accomplish this. I'm going to create a universal 3D game, but if you wanted to start off with a 2D or other, you are welcome to. Most of the beginning concepts, at least, will be able to apply to any type of game. However, as we get into my game that I'll be making for this video series, it'll probably transition to some 3D aspects at some point. So if you want to follow along completely, I suggest choosing Universal 3D. Otherwise, you can go ahead and pick the one that you want for whatever project that you'd like. So I went ahead and created this. I'm in editor version 6000.0.42 F1 at the current moment. I haven't checked on any updates today, but that's just what I'm going to go with. Let's see. Now, I'm going to come up with some project name for this. I'm going to create a 3D space shooter game, I think. Just a kind of 3D, 2D project, something simple with some moving around and some shooting aspects to it, so we can get some projectiles and whatnot in there and allow different players to connect and have maybe different ships to choose from, which could be, represent loadouts or something. So let's see, let's call this gotta come up with something quick, I guess. Let's do Void Arena. How about that? Why not? Void Arena. That's what I'm going to call this game. Let's create project. Alright, now that we're here, let's go to Window, open our package manager, go to Unity Registry. We can start by searching net, and it should find netcode. We're going to do netcode for game objects, and let's hit install. Now we just wait for that to install. Alright, now that that's done, we're going to install a couple more packages. Let's do transport. Unity Transport's already installed as a dependency. That's good. Let's check one more, make sure our collections are installed. And it is also installed as a dependency. So we're good there too. We can go ahead and close this out. Let's go to our project. You can see there's some basic information and default data here. We're going to start creating some new stuff. So first off, let's go ahead and create a folder for our scripts that we're going to have in the future. And let's create a prefabs folder. I'm sure we're going to need that at some point. Now within our scene, we're going to just create an empty object so we can start with our network manager. Let's create empty, call this network manager. Let's go ahead and add some components. Network manager. And Unity Transport. Now that we have both of these configured, we can make sure our default port for the Unity Transport is 7777. We're going to enable use connection data. Alright, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and start with the basic chat. A lot of games, when you get online, have some form of chat communication. We could also use that as a user input in the future as well. So let's go ahead and get started with a basic chat. So I'm going to start off with a script. I'm going to go here into my scripts folder and I'm going to create a new C# script. And this script I'm going to call Chat Manager. We'll wait for the script to open up here. And the first thing we want to do is we want to change this, instead of what we would normally do, which is a mono behavior, we're going to do a network behavior. And to be able to do this, let's make sure we're doing using unity.net code, net with a capital N, net code. We have a couple more using TM Pro. My autocomplete is not working right now. Alright, now I got the preferences and I got the correct version of Visual Studio loading up. Let's go ahead and get this autocomplete working a bit quicker using TM Pro for text mesh, using Unity Engine and UI. There we go. The class is actually with a U. So let's go ahead and do a public input field. Call this chat input. Now let's do another public, but we're going to do Text Mesh Pro this time. Text Mesh Pro UGUI. This will be the chat log. Let's create a server, RPC. We'll do require ownership. And we'll set this equal to false. Public void send chat message server RPC, and let's do string message and ulong client ID. So we'll have different client IDs, we'll have different names of players, and ultimately just IDs, hopefully, depending on the dedicated server that this will be passed to, so we know who's saying what, and then of course the message. So let's do string final message. We'll set that equal to, let's do player client ID and something like this, but I don't think I want this chat message, so let's just do player and message, just like that. And now we'll do receive chat message client RPC final message. Now we don't have that method yet, but we're going to create that. That's going to be part of the client. So we just created the server RPC. Now we're going to create the client RPC. So we do client RPC. And now here's where we're going to do the void. And it's going to autocomplete for us. And for this, we're just going to do the chat log. Right? We're adding to the chat log. And since it's a log, let's do .text. But we want to do plus equals because we want to see the whole log of the messages, and we don't just want to do a message, we don't want this to be one big string, so we want there to be a new line at the end of it. That way each message is its own message like you see in any chats. Now let's create our submit command for sending on submit chat if is client and not string dot is null or white space. We don't want empty messages to be able to be pasted into the chat. That's what that's saying. And we're going to do chat input dot text. And now we can do send chat message server RPC. And then from here we can do our chat input dot text. We're not done. This autocomplete likes to think we're done, but we're not done. Network manager, where is it? Work manager dot singleton dot local client ID. And for our last bit, let's do chat input dot text equals, we could do string dot empty. You can also do this. So either works. We'll do this since a lot of people are used to that. And now we can start to create our canvas. So let's go ahead and create UI canvas. We can call this canvas the, well, this is the main canvas, so we'll just leave this as canvas. Let's go ahead and create, let's focus on this. So here's our canvas. We can see it in 2D. And now we can start to work with our UI. Now I'm no UI expert, so I'm just going to create something basic. So first we need to create some sort of background image or something just to kind of see, you know, have a backing to it. Right now we just got the basic Unity look. So let's do an image. I'm just going to have it fill it. Let's do another UI element. Let's see. We can do a canvas within this. Let's see, we want it to be in the bottom left is I think where I plan on putting it. So let's go ahead and set our anchors. And then our width, let's see, I'll start 500. 500 looks fine. And our height, we'll make it a little bit shorter than it is high, so let's try 400. No, maybe a little bit less. Yeah, 300. That should work. 250, 150. So now we have it in our lower left corner. Alright, that looks fine. At least fine for now. So that's just basic. We don't have any image in the background. We'll probably change this up and make it look a little bit better later on. But just to get the first episode going of a chat and a multiplayer client going, let's do this. So now we need the input and then a TextMesh Pro for the chat log within this image. So we'll use this image as our base background. Now within this, let's put our input. Let's go to UI, and then we have input field. Let's just import our TextMesh Pro Essentials since we already have that in. We don't need the examples or extras. You're welcome to install that. Let's put it down at the bottom center for our anchors and our position. Right now our box is 30 height. That sounds fine. We want it to be I think I want it to be nearly the same width. So our width is 500. I'm thinking maybe 450. We can set it a little to the left. Let's see. Not 150. What do we want? We want it at 15 roughly. Maybe we should give it a little bit of padding. Let's do 20. So this is our input. What did I do? 450. So yeah, negative 25. That's about right, but we'll do negative 20 to match that padding. Maybe not 450. 425. Because I want there to be a button, I think, to hit send. Eventually, we could play around with this later, so I'll leave it at 450, just so it kind of looks like this right now. And then maybe we'll come back to this and add a send button. But ultimately, they could just hit enter too, because when we enter, we have a new line. So let's go ahead and leave it at that. So we have our input. We're going to call this chat input. And then we need to add one more UI element. And this is going to be our text because we want to display the chat log. So let's go ahead and do text. I'll leave it centered, but let's do to the left. Now this is going to be the same width. Maybe a little bit more, 475. So just a hair between. We were having 5 of padding on the edges, so we could do 490. That would kind of match. And then the height, we have 30 plus 5 plus another 5, so we'll have 40. Because we want 5 between it, I think, before. And then we need to go all the way up to the top, which is 450. So let's do something around 420. Oop. Let's not adjust that one. Did I do? I didn't do 400. I did less than 400. What was our size here? It was 300. Was the height? Okay. So our height, let's do 280. No, because we have 40. So 245. That's fine. Let's see where our input's at. So we need to raise this up a bit. We're going to call this our chat log. So position Y, 40. Okay, I think that's good enough. There's a little bit of a gap, but we can adjust these numbers a little later. You can make it look pretty. Right now I'm just going to get it set up. So we got the chat log, the chat input, and then we can create our button to hit that send to trigger that event. So where's our button? Let's put our button down in our bottom right. Let's make it 30 by 30. Alright. Do the send message button. Since we have this background here that's gray, just make everything black. Let's see, our font size should probably be a bit smaller. Let's see. Okay, it's a little off, but that's fine. I don't mind for right now. And then for our chat log, let's do the same. Let's get our color. So this is new text, we can't even see it. Now we can see it. It's a little bit large too. We'll make it size 16 font. And that looks fine. Okay. So now we can create our chat manager. So we're going to create a new empty chat manager. And for this, we're going to add our chat manager we created. And it's going to ask us if we want it to have a network object component. We're going to say yes. Now we got to set up this button too, so we have our button. We want it to do something when it clicks, so we can have it do the chat manager's function, which is on submit chat. Now let's add host and client buttons. Alright, so we're going to end up creating a connection UI, so let's go ahead and create a new empty script. And this time let's call this one connection UI. Let's launch it. For this, we're going to be using Unity Netcode, of course. We're also going to be using the Unity Engine UI. And then again, it's in mono behavior. So for this mono behavior, let's have a public input field, IP input, public void host game. Within this, we'll do the network manager. Dot singleton dot start host. We're going to create another method called public void, and this is going to be join game. So we always have a host, we always have a join. And for this join, we're going to do a variable, and we're going to call this variable transport, or set it equal to the network manager singleton get component. And this is going to be Unity transport. There we go. And then we're going to do the transport dot set connection. Oh, I see, it tricked me. Transport dot set connection data. We're going to do IP input dot text, because we're going to allow the user to set the input the IP. We want them to be able to start their own dedicated server or host a local area network server, and then for others to be able to set it and connect to it. So now that we have this, we can set the port. Just do standard 7777. Then network manager dot singleton dot start server. And then we have one last one to make, which is starting the dedicated server. And with this, we're just going to do the network manager dot singleton dot start server. All right, now our connection UI class is done. We'll go ahead and hit save. Looks like I must have hit Control Z. So now we save, and now we need to go back and add the UI buttons. And now I'm going to correct this lowercase I here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's go back to Unity. And then rename. Capital I, there we go. Capital I. Just so they're the same, so we don't get any compilation errors. Okay, now within this main canvas, we're going to, this one is called chat. Let's create a new UI canvas. Let's call this one connection. Within this connection UI, let's add another image so we can see it. And then let's scale it. Now this connection UI we're going to have in the center. Let's have it a healthy 500 wide and 500 tall. It doesn't need to be this large. It can just remain this large for now. We might add some other settings to it later. We could do it certainly smaller if you'd like, because we don't have really much to enter. We're just going to have a couple buttons here. So we're going to have 3 buttons. We're going to add a new UI button. Let's call this button host. And we're just going to duplicate this a couple times. This next button is called join. The final one will be dedicated server. Okay. Now for this, since this is within the image, we can keep them all centered just like this, but we'll go with the host just above. These are 30 height, so let's set this one to 45, and then let's set the other to -45. So these are just going to be our 3 buttons for now. Let's go ahead and change the text of these. Host. Join. Dedicated. Alright. Very basic UI. So one other thing we'd like to do is we don't want there to be too many players. We want to be able to limit the number of connections that we can have to the server so as not to overload it. At least that is one of the goals that I'd like to have. So we're going to create another script. That way we can have a max number of players that we're going to have. So we're going to do a custom script, and it's going to allow us to set the number of players. So let's create a new C# script. This script we're going to call max players, or maybe player. Let's call this server settings. And then it's going to be simple void awake. So we'll add the mono behavior over here. So void awake, we're going to do network manager dot singleton dot on client connected callback, do plus equals ID create this expression here. Do if network manager dot singleton dot connected clients dot count. We're going to do greater than max players. So let's create this. Let's do public int max players. Well, let's set this to 10. Sure, why not? 10 sounds good to start with. We're not even going to create 10 clients initially to test this, but just to get the server settings up, let's create 10 max players. So if the network connected clients count is greater than the max players, then we're going to do network manager dot singleton dot disconnect client, and then the ID. And we're going to debug that just to make sure when we go to test this later. I'll probably lower that number for testing purposes. Client rejected. Server full. Boom. So just something simple so we know that that's why that connection was declined. The server was full. Let's go ahead and end that, and we can save these server settings. Alright, now with this connection UI that we made, we're going to attach it to our network manager. And we don't have an IP input field. Let's go over to our connection UI real quick. We do use it here if we're going to join the game, so let's go back over to our IP or our join section, and let's add one more item. Let's do an input. We're going to raise this 90 and let's put some tags. Okay, host address, just to give the player a bit of a hint as to what's going on. And now with this host address, we're going to call this field the IP input. Now back over at our network manager, we have our IP input. Okay, so what happened there is that the input field I had was just a normal text input, and we were doing TextMesh Pro input field in the editor. So here I selected a TextMesh Pro, so I just changed the input field type. So now I should be able to come over here to Network Manager and drag and drop my input field. So that's why I didn't drag and drop before. Now with this we have the IP, so when we hit join, if we look back at our connection, when we hit join game, we can start it based off the IP input and then start the server. So we'll go ahead and start that via the input. For hosting, we're just going to take this as the default and we're going to host a game. So we're not going to take any input, we're just going to create it based off of our host. And dedicated server, same thing. You're just going to be able to run this and start it up and then connect to it locally, so we can have port forwarding and routing and whatnot on top level, but at least for local we're able to set it up this way. If you had an IP that was to a dedicated server, so you set this up on like the Google Cloud platform or something, you have a static IP, you would then have that static IP as the input for people to be able to join your game so that they could see that server running on that game. We're going to be running on the port 7777, so it should be able to connect at that point when they go to connect. So, and you could change that in the settings too. If you were to compile this and you had your own dedicated server that you wanted to run and you only wanted to run one versus having people be able to select it. I like the option for people to be able to host theirs, so that's what we're doing here. And that was just a quick explanation of what you could do to it. So those are the three connections that we're going to have and what we got. Let's go back over to Unity. We need to wire these up. So we have our host button here, and when we do our host button, let's run it against our network manager. And we have our function, which this is host, so we should run it as what, right? Host game. And there's our host game. We hit join. Join game. And then dedicated server. Start dedicated server. Alright, so now we have all that hooked up. We can give this a test run. So next we'll go ahead and hit save. Let's make sure our scripts are saved too. They're all saved. Alright, so I had to make a couple of adjustments because when I tested this, I realized that we weren't getting the updates everywhere. What we weren't doing was displaying it to everybody, broadcasting it to everybody. So, and we needed to do something a little different. So let's just go back over here, check out our chat manager. I added some logs, and you're welcome to keep the logs or add those too, just to see what's going on when we're sending the messages. But you can see a few things have changed here. I'm now calling it broadcast chat message, and we're going to call all this for the client RPC, which before it was receive. And now we're going to call separate append to chat, which does this, is just extracting it a little bit. But what really is happening is, so on the server side, we're broadcasting the message, we're adding it to the chat log of the server as well. That way the server can see it, which before we were not. We're only doing it for the receiving end, which was the client. And the host is the server as well. So on the host machine, it wouldn't work. Dedicated, be fine. But we want to broadcast to all clients, so we're going to call it broadcast. And now when they're on submit, we're doing a little bit different. We pull out this is null or white space and just return if that's the case, because we don't want to do anything after that. However, this time when we take in that chat message, we're going to send the chat message to the server RPC, so that way the server can then broadcast it. So this is, if it's a client and it's not the server, then we're going to send it to the server so it can broadcast it to all the other clients. Else, if we are the server, so this is the server that's running on, then we're going to broadcast the messages to all clients and then append to our own chat so we can update it if we're the host. So that's what's going on here. The connection UI, I did create a few logs just to see that, but that's all that's changed. Now let's go back over here. Now with this, I did pull out, I created a connection manager, and the connection manager is nothing more than this connection UI script. So it was on the network script before. Now the connection manager is on this connection UI script, or the connection UI scripts on this connection manager, and we just linked it with the input for this host address. So from this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to update this so it doesn't just say host address here. I want it to actually say something more meaningful that the clients are going to likely use. So we're going to do a local host address. Our placeholder will be the same. This did not get updated. Let's try this again. Would help if I updated it in the correct location. So there we go. That's our local IP. We already have the local port. This is just an example for people, but if you're doing it testing like I will be doing, it'll be good for being local. One other thing I saw here that I'm going to edit now is this text area that we have for this new text, for this chat log. The new text is actually being appended, so we don't want this new text here, we just want it to be a fresh chat log. So I'm just going to delete that out, click somewhere else so it's empty, and now we're ready to go. So I'm going to save the scene because I just edited that. I'm going to close my other window that I had open. Let's go ahead and build and run. We're going to create, save it. I thought I saved, but let's do that again. We're building and running. Alright, now we're going to do dedicated. This doesn't matter for anything other than join that IP address above, so we're going to do dedicated. And I'm going to type my first message in here, hello. And so it says host, because I'm the dedicated host server, player 0, that's our ID, I'm the 0th connection, the first connection to the server, so it's player 0 for the time being, and then I typed in hello and I hit send. So now we can see that that chat's there. Let's go back to Unity. We can run it here as well. We'll hit play. It's just going to build the game and do it locally in the editor. Now from here, nothing else is going on currently, and I'm not connected. So if I type hello, again, nothing's going to happen until I hit join. So I already have this entered just for simplicity's sake, so I'm going to hit join. And we can see in our Unity console in the logs, it says join game called. And then it's attempting to connect to that IP address that we entered and then that port that we have set to the default. So now we can try to send hey there. And this says player 1, hey there. Now we don't have any other messages because we're not getting any historical chats when we join. If we go back over though, we see hey there. And so I can say, oh hey. And now player 0, the host, says oh hey. I can say hi player 0. This is hi player 0. Now I noticed that the client doesn't have the player tagged with it, so we can adjust that. I don't believe we added that in the client code. If we go back over to our connection chat manager and we go to the client, we are actually not anywhere except for the server. The server is the one that gets the player and is adding that player ID. So that's why the client chat isn't doing that. We can update that later so it appears the same for both, because we want to see who's who. We want to know who we're talking to. Otherwise, the chat just gets a little out of hand unless we have these labels in there. But we now can see that those two connections are working. And if we went ahead and spun up another, so if I open where our game is built and I just run the game exe, we'll have another one. We're going to hit join again. I'm going to say MI player 3. And this is player 2 because we are the third player. And now if we go back over, we see, hey, MI player 3. And there we are. So now we have all those connections working. We have a basic chat. We just need to fix the client side so that we can see these different player IDs. And then it would be nice if we had player names that we could enter, if we had like some name in here, and so when we signed in, if that name was available, then our ID, it wouldn't put our player 0 in our ID, it would just say whatever name that we entered. So that'll be our next step, and we'll go ahead and update some of the other things in order to get this multiplayer game started. After we get the chat set up so that we can talk to our friends, we're going to get a basic game and just movement set up to walk around in. So those are the next two steps. Maybe we'll do them in one episode, but I think this one's long enough. I'll see you guys next time. Like and subscribe. Thanks.